Thank you all for sticking with this. This is being a change. It's kind of a strange option. We've had a number of talks about security-related topics. We did the roundtable yesterday. Nir gave a talk earlier today about some of the case studies. In fact, we were in here yesterday. We'll be again tomorrow for the roundtable. It was a little surprising to have people actually get up in front of the room and say, yes, I have had fraud. We had one guy who came up and said he had $400,000 worth of fraud in 1 week. In this particular case, because he had a asterisk server in his premises connected to his switch that he was not allowed to touch. Had no access, had never been updated, had none of the security patches, and they got hit. $400,000 worth. Okay. Fraud is a very serious problem. According to the CFCA, in their 2009 survey, it was over $80 billion of loss to telecom fraud. Okay, this is a variety of areas. Subscription fraud for $22 billion. PBX and voicemail hacking, which is most relevant to you guys here, was $15.1 billion in 2009. Okay, premium rate services, which is more related to telcos and ITSPs, is also another $4.6 billion. 96% of the people who were, 91% of the people who were part of that survey felt that fraud was increasing. Okay, I have a white paper that I will hand out to you guys if you want later. And one of the things we've noticed is over time, there's a steady trend. It was less than in 1994, it was less than $10 billion of fraud annually, and it's just continuously been climbing to we're now at over 80. And in 2 weeks, the new survey's coming out, and we'll have new numbers that will probably put that closer to 100. Okay, I borrowed a couple of slides from earlier. There are organizations that collect and assign blacklists to known fraudulent numbers. Okay, and when you look at where are these destinations that people are calling, okay, Sao Tome is 43% of all of the numbers on the blacklist are destination to there. Okay, but you'll notice the list includes the USA, Switzerland. Fraud does not differentiate between size of company, location of company, location of destination of the call. Everybody is vulnerable. And to use the melodramatic quote from the press release we put out last week, it's not really a question of if, it's a question of when. Okay, and this ranges from everything from the news of the world, voicemail hack problem that we had that Rupert Murdoch is in trouble for, to people who are getting hacked. There was somebody who was sentenced to 12 years in jail just 2 days ago for doing subscription fraud. He's in Texas. He did it through a company that he bought in the UK. Okay? Now, different kinds of businesses will get hit with different categories or have different concerns for fraud. Okay? There are some very basics, and I'll go through the ones that hit everybody. But for an enterprise, more companies are now using voice over IP, which means that there is more chance for fraud. It's coming down from what used to be very expensive phone systems and very expensive PBX systems that used to be strictly for enterprises. Now you can find every corner kiosk has its own PBX, which is susceptible. Okay, so there's a lot more of a problem both to the legacy and the newer voice over IP. I would love to say here at Astricon that Asterix is not subject to this. Unfortunately, there is no switch that is not subject to this. Every one is possible, and it is not necessarily a problem with the hardware. It's usually a problem with the people in the office, the CEO or head of the tech group that decides that, oh no, I don't need to have blocks. I don't need to have this taken care of. I want to make sure everything is open, no delays. Okay, 9 times out of 10, you will find that it's the problem of people did not set the right password, did not change from the default password, or use something simple like the same 4 digits as their extension as their password. People are using all sorts of phishing attacks, and I'll go into this in a little bit, which specifically is one related to the call centers. There is a problem known where people will call into a call center, especially financial ones, with a small piece of information. They'll call in, they'll talk to a rep, say, hi, my name is so-and-so, I need to get to my account. They'll get a little more information. 2 minutes later, they call again. I mean, realistically, how many times should a person, one single phone number, how often should it actually call into a call center in 1 hour? Okay. We're seeing cases where in 1 hour, where it should be no more than like 2 times people are calling in. You will have people who are doing this to do social engineering to the call center operators, more than 10 calls in an hour. None of the current systems are able to detect this. The anti-fraud solutions that you have at the carrier do not see this. And your CRM will not see it because nobody is actually looking for how many times am I getting a repeat call. This is one of the things that we're looking at into the solutions that I'll be describing. And internet telephone service providers have a whole different category of subscription fraud, other kinds of problems where you'll have people trying to do dial-through. The guy who was just arrested in Texas, was convicted in Texas, was buying minutes from BT at one price, selling them at a discount, taking in the cash, and then declared bankruptcy before his bill was due. So he was bringing in thousands, if not millions of dollars, and then just walked away and BT can't touch him. So there are all sorts of things that are going on. Basic problems, system hacks, okay? Especially as people are tying their PBX into their databases to their online system. Everybody knows firewalls are protecting your internet connection. But your voice over IP connection, somebody can potentially hack into and then side through into your IVR, into your CRM, download all of your customers' credit card numbers or other information. So there are ways that you have to actually look at doing this, okay? One of the most common things is for people to go in and find an unused or create a mailbox that then allows them to do pass-through. You dial in, you now pass through, you can make long-distance calls to anywhere in the world, and if there's no rules to prevent it, you can make calls which will result in arbitrage fraud, in which case they're calling through your PBX a number that costs $1 to $10 a minute, and they get a kickback of half of that for the service from the end company. So this is the same as dialing a 1-900 number where you get the money for it, and they're doing it through your PBX. Okay? So to prevent this, obviously they're going in, they're using default passwords because they can figure out what brand PBX you're using. They're trying also the most common passwords, 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 1, 1, 1, the extension number. And they're finding that this happens often enough that they can go in, they can steal the mailbox, and they can go out and attack it. Okay, and in the next slide, I'll actually go into some of how you prevent these things. They're hacking in to do things and going into denial of service attacks. We're seeing a bunch of that happening recently. The most common problem we're finding is what's called internal misconduct. Okay? Chances are the cleaning lady is not supposed to be calling her grandmother back in the home country at 3 o'clock in the morning for an hour at night. The phone company sees this as a valid call, but it's not part of your business. So these are kinds of things that we're seeing. A lot of cases you have employees who are making long-distance calls who are not authorized to, who are making international calls, who are calling premium numbers, et cetera. And this we're seeing is a large percentage of the cost that hits enterprises. So this is the internal ones. Off-hour hacking, okay? There are a lot of cases where people are getting hit overnight. 4th of July weekend, we've seen a couple of cases where the company is closed. There's not a single person there, but somebody hacks the PBX and is actually going in and getting $70,000 worth of phone calls onto their phone bill just because it's closed for a long weekend. We gave an example yesterday of in Israel on Yom Kippur, which is a day where not only is there no television, no radio, the roads are closed because they're filled with kids on bicycles. A religious organization got hit for $17,000 worth of calls into the Palestinian Authority on a day where the people who work there are not allowed to make a phone call. Okay? Somebody just hacked in and was able to do it because they were using the same voicemail password for all of the accounts, and they were able to do dial-through. Okay? Known fraudulent numbers. Okay? Currently, we have a record database of over 70,000 fraudulent numbers. It's collected through a group of agencies, the CFCA, which has the FBI, AT&T, and others, FEMA, which is the UK equivalent, have numbers where they know that 100% of the time if somebody is calling this number, it's for a fraudulent purpose. Okay? And these things are very much like the old Nigerian email scam. Send me your name and your email address and I will send you money. Although actually the latest one is Gaddafi's son saying, my father had $400 billion hidden. Send me your email address so I can steal the money back. This one's come out in the last week or so. People are doing the same thing. We know the fraud, we know where it's happening. And the biggest problem is that for various reasons, disclosure for securities, things to shareholders, people are unwilling to actually get up and say, we were defrauded for X amount of money. Okay, you will find articles, and in the white paper I've got 5 or 6. In most cases, anybody who is a publicly traded company will not allow their company name to be used because they're afraid that their stockholders are going to come back and nail them for misconduct. Currently in the US, they're now looking for changing the rules. The SEC just started to require companies to report cyber attacks because these are directly related to profits. My expectation is within the year you're going to see telecom fraud is also going to be required to be reported because these are the kinds of things that you need to give in disclosures to the people who own your company. Okay? What you can do about it. I'm probably going a little fast for this. Okay? First question, does your company really need to provide dial-through? Do your customers, as asterisk people, you probably more often than not have customers running it. When do they really need dial-through? When do you need to be able to dial back from the voicemail box and it says, you got a voicemail, do you want to call the number back? Okay. A lot of people, every phone switch out there has the capability of this. Is there a reason to enable it? Is there a reason to enable it for everybody? Can you give them a calling card? Does the receptionist need to have this function, or is it only certain salespeople? How can you limit it? The more it's limited, the less chance there is for fraud. Okay? Passwords. Okay? Do not use the factory default settings. I am sure every one of you in here knows of at least one case where somebody wanted to use the default password because it was easy to remember. Anybody ever hear of this? See this? Whether it's a router or a PBX, whatever it is, your voicemail on your cell phone. Okay? How many people have you heard of that are still using the default 1, 2, 3, 4? Okay? You need to change this. You need to make sure that the passwords, that's the problem. It's easy to remember. Okay? Don't use the default ones. Set password management that does not allow them to use standard things. One of the most common things in a company is that your extension, or the last 4 digits of your DID, is your password because it's easy to remember. It's also easy to hack. Okay? A number of switches are slowly moving over to it's now no longer a mandatory 4 digits. Some of them are going 4 to 8, 6 to 8, and because it's a variable, it makes it harder to attack. Okay? Make sure that the PIN numbers are changed regularly and are properly maintained. Okay? Everyone has heard of stories of the person who goes, oh, what's my password? Oh yeah, it's written down here on the piece of paper under the keyboard. Okay, or written on the phone. These things happen. Okay? And physical intrusion is a legitimate concern here. Okay? One of the things, actually it's on the next page, is your PBX in a locked room when it's not actually being maintained, when somebody isn't working on it? These are serious concerns and people make mistakes. Mailboxes. Does the phone in the lobby need a mailbox? Does every one of the conference rooms need a mailbox? The coffee room, the copy room, the server room. All of these places tend to have a phone these days because phones are cheap, but do they really need to have a mailbox? Because these can be hacked and then used as dial-throughs. Okay? When somebody is let go from the company, close the mailbox, open a new one when you have a new employee. Okay? Only when they're replaced. Do not leave mailboxes open for people to hack. Okay? Make sure that the PBX room is locked when not attended. Okay? You need to look at proactively. Your phone company will notify you if they see something bad 30, 60 days later, or a week later when they notice this. You need to proactively monitor this. You have to see what's going on. You have to pay attention to what's happening with the switch and with your phone services. Okay? You need to make sure that there is no major changes. One of the case studies Nir gave earlier today was a company that was seeing a 2% increase in duration of calls every month for a 0.3% increase in number of calls. If you're not paying attention, you don't know what's going on, you don't know how to fix these things. In that case, it wasn't fraud, it was just that it was a dial-out service that happened to be going to somebody that kept changing the IVR menu option, so every time somebody would call in, they'd have to go through more and more keystrokes, which just made the call longer. So they fixed that one with DIDs. Okay? So again, proactive monitoring is the key. Your phone company does not know what you as an end customer do as a business. They look, AT&T looks at 1 million calls every hour. They really don't know your business is closed at night. It's 24 hours. Calls to North Korea are valid or not valid. International calls are not valid or not valid. You have to actually proactively be paying attention to this. You need a tool, okay? And the obligatory corporate part of this, we've put together a tool that does proactive monitoring, and coming in December, we'll actually do proactive fraud. We went from analytics to detection to protection. So just real quickly, currently hooked up to 6,000 plus PBXs, 100 million CDRs processed already. We've issued more than 50,000 alerts. We have a confirmed blacklist, again, of over 70,000 known fraudulent numbers. Only 30% of the alerts that we've sent out are related to hacking. Most of it is coming from things that are internal. Okay? And we've set up a partner program. Actually, I don't know if I have internet to show you what it looks like. What we've done is we have a solution that enables you to set up whitelists and blacklists of time, of country, for individual extensions, et cetera. And you can get alerts when somebody is suddenly talking for more than an hour on a call. When they're talking at 2 o'clock in the morning, we'll send out an email to the administrator. What we're doing going forward is when we know it's one of those 70,000 fraudulent numbers, we're sending a message to the PBX not to allow the call to go through. As part of the call setup, we're interrupting it and saying, call not allowed. Okay? The analysis we did is in this just last month, in September, $150,000 worth of calls for one particular customer were identified and blocked because we were doing the proactive monitoring and were able to notify them to cancel. Once it becomes automated, it becomes better. So we're looking at solutions for hardware vendors, and we're talking to people here, telecom service providers, et cetera. Any questions about fraud, what you can do with it? There will be, again, the security roundtable will be talking about solutions in a little more details related to Asterisk and open source tomorrow. Tomorrow just before lunch. Actually, I think it's in this room also. I think so. I'd have to look that up. I know it's just before the session just before lunch. It's either here or across the hall, but I'm pretty sure it's in this room if I remember correctly. Like I said, the first session we had yesterday, we had 5 guys get up and give, I or one of my customers has been defrauded recently within the last year. The scariest one was the $400,000 one. But there were other ones, $20,000, $30,000, $80,000 in one weekend kind of things. We're seeing some of these things will go over years where people will get arrested, and there was one case out of Romania where over a year it was, what was it? $1.6 million of telecom fraud that these guys got the cash for in 1 year. Okay, by doing things out of Romania. This is a serious problem, and we're trying to work together with the community to find ways to stop it. Okay? And the simple fact is that the more phone switches are out there and the more people are doing it, the more cases that people can make mistakes or people can leave themselves vulnerable, which is why we're doing so many things at this session to make sure everybody knows to think about it. A firewall protects you from some things, does not protect you from fraud. The various services offered by your phone company do not protect you from fraud. They don't know what to look for. Only the people who are setting up the rules on the switch and the people who know the business can really know what to do and how to fix it and how to prevent it. So we're looking to help set up the tools to make this possible. Got a few more minutes. Any questions? Any of you want to admit to having a fraud story that you are willing to mention? I mean, so.
Just going to ask, can you describe how that arbitrage works?
Okay. The arbitrage basically works. There are a number of cases. If you look at the example here in the US, for example, knowing whether a phone number is a cell phone or a non-cell phone is very difficult. There are places where you will have UK, other countries, where you will get an MVNO gets a block of numbers and is allowed to charge whatever connection fee or termination fee they want to within a certain reasonable limit. So you can end up getting an SMS that says, or a missed call, you dial it back. Your company thinks that it's going to pay a normal rate to the UK of 16 cents. Turns out that at the other end, the company is receiving 50 cents. And what will happen is that you will end up having people call you, so you will dial back so they can get the money coming into their account. And this is the way the arbitrage works, because what's being charged at one end and what's getting paid at the other end are out of sync. And this tends to happen because routing tables do not get updated, cost tables are not updated frequently enough, and it's impossible to keep up with this stuff. Every day you will have an MVNO created that can do this, and in a week they're gone. And it happens all over the world, and it's very difficult to detect.
So the charges basically just happen as calls placed?
Yeah. If you think about it, it's very much like the premium numbers that are here in the States. Dial a psychic for $8 a minute. Okay, you don't necessarily know that the number you're calling is going to charge that much. Who ends up getting hit with the bill depends on the situation. Sometimes it's the end customer, sometimes it's the originating telco, sometimes it's the final telco or the transversal. But in the end, because people are playing these games, there is a problem. We've had cases that we knew about between China and Taiwan, where because of the way the prices were, it was one company that was basically calling back to itself and forwarding in such a way that it was cheap to get the call into China, but they got profit for getting it into Taiwan. And eventually they're making thousands of dollars an hour or a minute just because of getting the kickback on these calls. So it's a specialized case of subscription fraud, but it's basically the same kind of thing of arbitrage fraud where you'd see it in the stock market or things like that, where people are trying to play off the margins and play games. And it's almost impossible to stop because it happens so rapidly. They're there today, they're gone tomorrow. Other questions? I mean, we can go through more horror stories. There are lots of different things that are going on with fraud. The scariest thing I've seen recently, how many of you have smartphones? Okay. Here in the States, Netflix came out with an Android product for specific models of Android back in February, okay, but only worked on certain phones. So somebody went out and created a Netflix app that they put into the Android market that wasn't quite legit. Looked good, was slightly off-centered, wasn't proper, but it used the right colors, the right phrases and everything. And people would download it because they think that they could put it onto their model Android, which wasn't supported by the regular Netflix one. And you'd hit to install, and it would tell you this is not a valid model. Please download a different version, and it would start installing malware onto your phone. So far, nothing has happened with the malware, but this is the beginning of it. Everything that we saw from the Windows world of 90s and early 2000s, where it went from nothing to being everywhere. So suddenly you had viruses and malware and hacking going on. We're now seeing this repeating itself into the mobile smartphones. And it doesn't matter the model. This will happen. iPhone is theoretically a little safer. I don't know that it's that much safer. People are going in there and they're finding ways to get you to click, whether it's they send you an SMS, whatever it is, they send you a MMS, whatever it is, and they will get stuff onto your phone that will enable it to do things. Okay, it's not a very big problem now. I suspect in the next 5 years it will be one of the biggest things that will freak people out. Okay, voicemail. How many of you have at least one voicemail account? How many of you have at least 3 voicemail accounts? Okay, home phone, work phone, more than one cell phone. These things are easy to hack. Okay, the News of the World case is a perfect example. They went and they hacked a voicemail box of somebody who was missing and was actually dead, but because they went in and started deleting messages and things, they gave hope to the family for 3 extra days that the young lady was alive. This has resulted in criminal charges, closing of one of the oldest newspapers in the world, and may actually cost Rupert Murdoch his control over a lot of his company. There's a lot of these problems going on, and there's very little that can be done to protect yourself of this if you don't actually proactively do it. It's a people problem. This has nothing to do with technology as a technology. It's, are the proper methodologies, are the proper procedures, are people behaving correctly? Phishing people or brute force hacking is easy. And it's a very scary thing for people to do. So, if there are no other questions or interests, I will point out, again, we have the white paper. This one is on benefits of telecom analytics for enterprises. We're also giving out 2-month free trials to our service, so you guys can play with it, test it, see if you like it. There's no point in going straight to something for cost if you guys don't have a chance to actually see if it works. Okay, last call for questions. Thank you.